Do you have a Gmail?
I do not.
Yeah, I rest my case.
Yes, case closed. There goes that encouragement gift.
Oh, my bad. All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today on the Blue Couch Podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Pitcher.
And I'm
And
the cohort, John Maskey.
yes, you are. Yeah. And you may be wondering why we're starting a podcast. And that is a valid question. And so today we're going to talk about this podcast. We're going to talk about our testimony and where we're kind of headed. So I want you to pull up your pillow and your blanket. I want you to jump on the couch with us. And this is the Blue Couch Podcast.
Let's go. All right, Charlie, I'm going to throw a couple questions at you.
All right, great. Let's do it.
First of all, what is the blue couch, man? We got to know. What is it?
Well, what is the Blue Couch? Well, for me, I think every child has a good, that has a good home. They take the time to have deep conversations with their parents.
Sure.
And I have four sisters.
God bless you.
God bless me. Four sisters, three daughters. I'm afraid. If I keep going. But
Oh,
for
man.
my four sisters and I, really, it was no different. We had these deep conversations. But for
Yeah.
us, we had a blue couch. It was a place that we could lay our burdens down at the feet
Mm,
of an angel. And
come
and
on.
for my older sister and I, that was our stepmom. And
Oh,
for
that's
my
sweet.
yeah, and for my three younger sisters, it was mom. So
Mm,
I'll explain a little bit. So growing up, it was no cakewalk, but it wasn't as bad. It wasn't bad as far as childhoods go, right? Some people are like, I had a
sure.
horrible childhood. I had a pretty good childhood.
Sure.
So I'm not trying to paint a bleak picture, but I think every kid only knows what they have. And so there's some times we felt like we had it bad. And by some people's standards, we may have. But by mine, I don't think it was so bad, as much as I think it was confusing at times.
Yeah.
My mom's first marriage gave me an amazing older sister. My dad adopted her when she was an
Mm,
infant. So she was my sister through and through. And we don't think of, I have all my sisters. There, I don't have any full-blooded siblings. I have all my sisters are half siblings. But it does not feel like that. I don't know what it's
sure.
supposed to feel
Sure.
like. Does anybody know?
It probably feels exactly the way you feel about your stepsisters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't have any stepsisters actually. I have stepbrothers.
Cool.
And but anyways, my mom's first marriage, she gave me that older sister, and my dad adopted her when she was an infant. And
Wow.
so there's baggage there, I think. My mom was a wonderful woman, my biological mom. She's filled with talent. She's got amazing charisma. She can steal a room with her charm.
Mm,
My dad is a great man. He's filled with the Spirit of God, and he's got this militaristic direction,
mm.
but equally great charisma. He was in the military for over 20 years.
Wow.
So I'm honestly surprised though that their marriage lasted as long as it did. They were pretty both their charismas, they were like waves crashing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
and so it was a marriage. It was filled with lots of disagreement. It led to their divorce. I was 7. My older sister was 9.
Gotcha.
Um, but something happened during and afterward. My dad began this spiritual journey, and he never turned back from it. He's still on that journey today, and
Cool.
it changed the course of history for my sister and I. My dad then found an amazing woman. He married her. He had 3 beautiful girls with her, and one they're all miracles. And she just became a special blessing in our lives. And for
Mm,
years, my older sister and I, we would sit with my stepmom and we would lay out the troubles of our life to her. And I'm sure she thought we were silly at times. I'm thinking, my oldest child is 9, and so occasionally we have these deep conversations where it's like, this is huge to her, but it seems little to me. I'm
yeah.
sure I'm
Yeah.
imagining my mom at these times having those conversations. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, we always felt heard, and we always felt like someone was there to hear our plight. She never took it anywhere. She always maintained our confidence.
That's huge for a kid. That's huge for a
Absolutely.
kid.
Right. If you feel like, I'm a children's pastor, and so kids need to feel like they can trust you. So I felt like I could trust her. I still do. So she always treated her as if we were the most important moment in her life. And so I have a
Mm.
dad. I have a dad, and I have had two stepdads. I have a mom. I also have a stepmom, and each of them have added value to my life in some way. I can look back on my life, and a lot of people, they like to point out negative. There is a lot, but there's a lot of good. Each of them have added great value to my life. And so, um, despite the negatives that are strewn throughout that, there's always been one place that kind of seemed to bring it all together. And that one place that took the problems of an adolescent child and even a young adult, and with new children, when we first got married, and kind of turned them into manageable chunks. And that was a blue couch.
Cool.
And, for those of you who are listening, I don't know if I can make a difference in your life. I sure know that I would like to. But to be honest, I can't change anything about you or make your life better. That blue couch showed me that my stepmom had a glue that held her difficult life together.
Hmm.
And that glue's the Lord. And so I don't have a blue couch. John here, he doesn't have a blue couch. We have blue lights. I
We
like
do
your
have
blue.
blue lights. That's as close as it can get from me. Yeah.
And I went to the furniture store. We actually got a dining room table recently, and I was looking at blue couches, and my wife is like, "Hey, what about this one?" And I'm like, "Not yet." So,
You have to wait until we start the podcast.
yes, we have to
Or
do.
do you? Yeah, that's great, man.
Yeah, we can't buy a blue couch. Well, yeah, maybe I want a blue couch,
Hmm.
but I don't have a blue couch. I have a podcast, and I have an idea. And the idea is that we can encourage people to seek the Lord, and hopefully have some conversations that will lead people like you at times in the right direction. And so each
Yeah.
episode, what John and I are going to try to do is we're going to attempt to have a conversation with each other or with somebody else on a topic that will hopefully help you along in your walk and your journey. And all that will happen right here on the Blue Couch podcast podcasts.
Podcast. Podcast. Dude, Charlie, that's great. I remember visiting. We got the privilege of actually visiting you a couple months back now. Gosh, it's been a while. But I remember you talking about putting this together and what that would look like, and we were riffing back and forth with titles and random goofy like titles for episodes and what are we going to call this? Two peas in a podcast, like all this
uh,
crazy stuff, right? I actually really liked that one.
I did. You know
But
what? I made a title for it. I
yeah,
I created an email.
you did all.
I
Did you
did.
go that far?
I went so
That's
far,
amazing, bro.
and
That's
then
amazing.
yeah, yeah,
And then
and then I settled on it.
it's funny how God works because then God's like, no, now that you've had your fun with your play title, I've got something that really speaks to who you are as a person and your family history and how you can help others. And you're like, oh, okay, Lord, fine, I'll do this one. No, I
Yeah,
know it wasn't hesitant at all. I actually really love this title because of what it means to you. Like that, hearing that is fantastic because now the expectation for what this is going to be so great for so many people.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so tell me this: what are your expectations, episode to episode, or just for the whole podcast in general? What are you trying to get out of this?
Well, I don't have visions of grandeur. I would like to be big. That's what people are saying. I would love to be huge.
It
I
was
would.
only I was counting down the minutes until the first Trump impression. Was it going to be
Yes,
you? Was it going to be me? I'm so happy that it was you.
yes. I
Yes.
wanted to beat you to the punch. I would like to be huge. But
Yes.
really, what I would like to do is I'd like to help people encounter Christ, not exactly the way that I've encountered him, but really just in a way that changes their life. My daughter and I were actually I ask my kids three questions every day. Not every day, almost every day. And those questions are how did you fail today? How did you succeed
Mm,
today? And then how did you help someone today? I want them to know that success and failure go hand in hand. And so the other day,
mm,
it was like 3 days ago, actually, my daughter and I were on the back porch, and she sat down on a chair in front of me, and I was in a camping chair. She said, Dad, I want to ask you a couple of questions. And I was like, go right ahead. I'm like, are we gonna have a deep conversation? And she goes, how'd you feel today? I was like, oh, okay.
Mm.
So I told her, and she said, how'd you succeed? And then I told her, and I did it with her, and we had this conversation about these things. But then afterwards, she said, she asked a really good question. She said, what makes you most happy? And I was like, had to think about it. You know, my wife, my kids, they make me happy. But I told her, I said, helping people. That's what
Mm.
makes me, every time I get to sit down and have a conversation with somebody and encourage them. And I truly believe this. I believe my spiritual gift is encouragement. Uh, in and I love it because every time I get to sit down and encourage somebody with a word, it makes my day.
Mm.
I absolutely love it. So yeah, that's my
I've been a
expectation.
I've been a wonderful, blessed recipient of your spiritual gift. You're an encouragement for sure to me.
Well, I appreciate it
Um,
because I was wondering, is
yeah.
that really my gift? John's like, well,
You're
you
like,
know,
is this ever gonna kick in for John? Like I'm sending him all this encouragement. He's just getting more depressed. No, just kidding.
you haven't told me at all.
I love you, Charlie.
Thank
First
you.
time you're hearing it, I know. Um, Let me ask you this then. You talk about your purpose and the gifting that God has given you, and you mentioned the Lord earlier. So let me kind of lead you into this question here. Where
Okay.
does your purpose come from? It might be an obvious question, but for the listener, I'm sure they'd love to hear it.
Sure. Well, I think we can all sit here and lie to ourselves. But really, I think it's a true statement that each of us has a God-sized hole in our heart. And I think that when we decide to be a follower of Jesus, that hole is filled. That hole is filled. But then what comes next, right? Are we just destined to walk this earth alone without any hope of direction? I don't think so. And so I remember a message once preached by a guy. He was actually one of our teachers in college. His name's Stuart Mason. He's a pastor out in California.
No, he's actually at Timberline Baptist Church. He's about
Is
three
that
hours
Oregon?
from here, from where I live. Yeah, yeah,
Oregon? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's Oregon. Yeah. So Timberline.
In fact, I was up in Oregon City this weekend with some friends, a mutual friend of ours, Cameron Howell, and he reminded me that Stuart Mason pastors like 45 minutes from where he lives, which is crazy. But anyway, not to detract.
No, I mean, he asked this question that
Great man, by the way. I've always loved him. He's
oh,
he's fantastic.
sports, huge sports nut. I always,
Oh yeah.
whenever he's brought up sports, I was like, and I'm wearing a Seattle Mariners hat. I am
He's
shamelessly not
yes.
very good at sports, but
You're a big LSU fan, but don't worry, I'm praying for you.
I'll wear that hat next time. I should have wore it first. I don't know what I was thinking. He asked this question. He said, "Do you want success or significance?"
Mm,
And so, I guess the question, I guess, I don't know, significance. If I'm summing it up in the story, over the past 4 years, I've had students that I taught when I lived in Colorado. They'll call me. They'll Marco Polo me. Marco Polo, and
mm.
those they're not a sponsor, but I would love them to be.
I've heard of them.
uh, yes, and and those conversations they're great, but there was one thing that kind of stood out to me. All of them said one way or the other. Um, well, I'll give the short story. I was preaching at a church in Colorado. I traveled back, and church had me out for a revival, and one of my old students, who I actually we had to kick him out of our school. Uh, but I he came to the preaching message afterwards. Him and I talked afterwards, and he told me, he said, Charlie, I felt like the entire time I was at that school that the only person who believed in me was you. And that
Mm.
that meant something to me. He's not the only one, only teenager to say that. I've been working in the ministry and churches for 10 years, and and that's just, this is not like a puff up moment. I get calls probably once a month, once every other month, from students of mine who've been encouraged throughout the years. They felt like I believed in them, and so that, to me, that's significance. You know, for instance, Sean, you've been a huge blessing to me. You've been a huge encouragement to me in the last 4 years. You and I kind of reconnected. And you've gone through a fair share of trials in your life, but along the way, I just felt like you took the time to lift up my arms and be there for me, even when you didn't have to. And I never felt worthy of that type of friendship. And for
Mm.
so many years, I felt all my friendships were superficial, and in many ways they were. But I realized that was just kind of the way that I was trained to be. I was trained to be superficial, and then I got my world kind of rocked, and I felt like I had no one to lean on. And we all need people to lean on. And I think that's a song. Then you rolled in. Yeah, you rolled along, and you were a friend at a time in my life. So God brought you into my life, which is a great
Oh man.
place to talk about your testimony.
Mm.
So
Beautiful. I like how you segued that and just complimented and then just handed it on. Now you talk, John.
yeah, yeah,
Oh my
we're tired of
goodness.
hearing me talk.
I appreciate those words, Charlie. That's very kind. Yeah, I remember actually when the season I was in, when we reconnected. And I believe it was through Facebook Messenger, as most of my interactions go, because apparently I'm a boomer because I don't know what Google Docs is. Who knows what Google Docs is?
Oh, I'm gonna
Just
ask a
kidding, guys.
clarifying question here, John. Do you have a Gmail?
I do not.
Yeah, I rest my case.
Yes, case closed. There goes that encouragement gift.
Oh, my bad.
No, I was gonna say I remember the job I was working and the season of life I was in. I was wrestling with a lot of questions. I grew up in a pastor's home. I had been um, on staff at a church on the East Coast for almost 8 years. My wife and I, we had two boys. Um, I'm doing all the things. I got all the ministry titles, all the positions. I'm a valuable. I would say I'm an asset to that
Sure.
ministry at this point. But all of my religion was superficial, and it was all about what I was doing on the external. Nothing was internal.
Hmm.
I had no functioning relationship with the Lord. That just kind of died off over the years after college. Um, and so I found myself kind of this shell and with nothing internally to kind of fuel my passion because I had passion initially for ministry. In fact, I would dare say I never really lost my desire to do ministry. I just lost all my zeal to really try.
Wow.
I'd been through some hard times as well, and I won't discount that because I don't want to I don't want to mislead facts. We were my wife and I got hurt, but we had no way to process the hurt. We'd not been trained on how to do that, and so we just kind of carried it all. And after 8 years, it felt like the death of a thousand cuts, is the phraseology I think that some might be familiar with. And so it was kind of like, you know what? Why don't we just go? Like we're getting battered here by the circumstances of life, by the reactions of others, by the decisions of others, and just life itself. Life comes at you, and it just the Bible says it rains on the just and the unjust. It just rains.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have an umbrella, sometimes you don't. Um, and we found ourselves, for lack of a better term, just tired of the rain. So we decided to just leave it all and move to the West Coast, and we did. And it was during that season we reconnected.
Yep.
And it was at a moment when things had kind of shifted for you as well, and you were in a different stage of life, almost around the same time.
Yep.
And during that season, we were only in California for, I mean, a calendar year, almost to the week before we ended up leaving California. But in that time, in the fall of 2021, um, Jesus showed up in a very spectacular way in my life, and I encountered him for the first time, which I know is different language for the way that we were raised.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
we don't put much there had not been much emphasis put on encounters because everything you needed to learn about your relationship you simply learned and read about. But as we know, no healthy functioning relationship can truly be full if there's no face-to-face interaction, if there's no actual feelings of love that are mutual.
Yeah.
And so I understood that God loved me. I had read about it. I had heard sermons about it. I had sang about it. I had even preached about it.
Yeah.
But I had never felt it. You know when you the first time when you were, whether it was the first date for some people or like the second or third date, but whenever it was for your spouse where you were like, I love this person. Like there's mutual attraction here. Like I feel it from you and I feel it myself. And I had never felt it from God. Not that he didn't love me. I had just never made space for myself to feel it. And there are other versions. There are reasons I believe for that, and we can get into those later. But let's just to sum it all up, there was an afternoon where I was particularly down on myself, and I've been going through some hard times, some very hard times dealing with addiction, anxiety, depression, having trouble sleeping, a lot of self doubt, serious depression, and I just began to really ask God some hard questions. For me, it was that my blue couch was a beat up Toyota Corolla.
Yep.
And I felt like I could meet God on and just say, God, you're either real or you're not. And if you're real, I'd like to feel that in as
Nothing
many
wrong with
words.
that. I think we kind of
And
grew up kind of feeling like you couldn't feel them at times, where it's
that's
like,
exactly right. I felt like I I felt like Thomas, like I was somehow failing to ask God to show me. And
sure,
we put on a side tangent. I relate to Thomas a lot, and I look at Thomas less and less as somebody who failed by asking Jesus or by saying, unless I can see him and experience him, I will not believe. Because out of all the 12 disciples, the only one that got to touch the physical body of the risen Savior that we know of is Thomas.
yeah, wow,
Why? Because he asked for it and the Lord gave it to him. And of course, the follow up is this that blessed are those who have not seen me and yet believe. But Thomas got to do something nobody else did, which is kind
absolutely,
of cool.
yeah,
Which is kind of cool. Anyway, it's just a different way. And again, I relate to Thomas, so I see him through that lens. I'm sure I'll
I do
admit
too.
that. Yeah, but Jesus showed up in that Toyota Corolla, that beat up car on the way home from work, at a 45-minute drive home from work, and I felt him for the first time. I felt his love for the first time. I know
Mhm.
I got saved in 1996, but I know that God loves me since 2021.
Wow,
Like I feel it. I know what it's like. It's different. And so since then, it's not been the same. And I am on a journey to help as many people as I can with the limited number of breaths I have left this side of eternity to reveal to people the love of God. And instead of just convincing them that God's love exists, which is what I did for the first 30 years of my life, I hope to spend the rest of my life taking them and plugging them into the love of God. So instead of just logically reasoning with you or biblically convincing you that God loves you, I'd like to lead you to a place where you can experience the love of God. So
yes,
that's which is more fun because Jesus does more of the work then too, by the way. He does way more
absolutely.
of the work.
I mean, how many years did I spend, and maybe you feel this way too, trying to take the credit for what God was doing in
Mm.
preaching the better message. I could preach. I want to preach the best messages. I want to,
Yes,
I want
yes.
to, I want to lead the best song service. You and I are both, we both music guys at churches. You're
Yeah.
much better than anybody knows. But I'm just telling you, I wanted to be the best song leader. I wanted to be the best singer. I wanted to be the best
Excellence.
preacher. Excellence. And
Strive for
I think
excellence.
excellence is good. I want to do,
Yes, I agree.
I want to be excellent at things.
Yeah.
But uh, where did God get the glory in that?
Mm.
And some people they may have a different
Yeah.
view of it, but I took a lot of I took a lot of the glory for myself.
Sure.
So
I resonate heavily with that as well.
yeah,
I get it.
man,
Yeah. So Charlie, what do you have to offer us, man? I know it's kind of a weird question, but what do you bring to the table? What do you bring to the couch?
what do I bring to the couch?
Tell
Well,
us.
encouragement. Hopefully, we've already talked about that. I believe my spiritual gift, like I said, is encouragement, but also mercy.
Mm.
I would encourage anybody who I'd like to talk about spiritual gifts at some point on this because I think every
Yes.
Christian should know what their spiritual gifts are and
Yeah.
then walk in those. But God has given me a great capacity for empathy. He's given me a great capacity for sympathy and forgiveness. And hopefully those don't sound like self-proclaimed strengths. But I've just gone through a lot and I think that I can encourage people to keep going. And
Mm.
so that's kind of what I That's what I feel like that's what I
Wow,
have to offer us.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this on a practical note. Where can we find this podcast? What are the platforms?
Hmm. So we of course will have the podcast, and the goal is to start doing a podcast every other week. And so, but
Hmm.
also what I want to do is I want to do a YouTube channel,
Yeah,
and it's going to feel a little weird for me, but I'm going to just get on and I'm going to record encouraging, I guess you could call them sermonettes, and I'm going to post them to YouTube. We'll also have a Patreon. Uh, if you want to support us in getting better equipment, maybe even a blue couch or a blue chair, we'd love
let's
that.
go. Take Devora back to the shop and be like, babe, we have to now.
Now
The
we have to get the
podcast is
blue
popping
couch.
off.
Yes,
We got
exactly.
to get it.
And those are more expensive, than you think, couches. I looking at them, I'm like, well, maybe we don't need one, but
Just paint our current couch blue. What could go
I'm
wrong?
just gonna spray paint my blue chair. But honestly, I think it'd be cool to move our podcast to a blue couch and have actual physical guests. Maybe even get John down to where I'm at, or over now where I'm at, and get his family to join us.
Let's
Um,
go. Let's go.
but yeah, that's
I
it.
love it. Well, is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I actually saw this on another podcast, and I don't know how it's going to work, so we're just going to roll with it. But it was such a great idea, and I want to use it.
What you got?
John, you and I like a lot of the same things. Whenever we find ourselves on the phone, we talk a lot. Um, but I want to
Seriously.
start. Yeah, I want to start each episode with an assignment.
Mm.
And what do you think that is, John?
Let's go with well,
There's something
you Americans incorrectly call this sport soccer, but the correct biblical definition is football.
football.
Yes.
Yes, I don't watch football. This is one area that you like to talk about that I have nothing to add to the conversation about.
Yeah,
So
that's probably why I don't bring it up much around you because I know you're just like, oh, football, the one where they put on the helmets and the really tight pants.
I was like,
No,
John, you
Charlie.
you live in America, America.
You live in
So
America.
yeah, so I want you to send me some good football content and that
Done.
you love. And next time that we record, we'll talk about it. We'll
Oh, dude, I'm so excited because I've got some stuff to send you, and I'm not going to send you like 8 games and make you watch because
okay, good.
they're 90-minute matches plus extra time and halftime in between. So I'm not going to make you watch, you know, a bajillion hours. But I've got some clips of some stuff I'd like to send you. So for
Okay,
sure, this is a great assignment for me. I like this one.
great. I like it. I like sports. It's college football season, so I'm watching my LSU Tigers. But
Gosh,
I'm looking
there
for
you go again, downing the whole conversation.
first of all, you need to
I'm
knock it
just kidding.
off. Most people have been saying the LSU Tigers are the best, and they are.
A lot of people have been saying it. A lot of people.
Oh, so good. Well,
Oh my goodness.
all right. Well, we're out of time. And so
Yeah.
I want to thank you each for tuning in to the Blue Couch podcast, where each episode we'll spend time talking about things that might just be up your alley and hopefully encourage you along the way. And I'm very honored that you would take time to listen. And thank you very much. Okay, before we go, I want to challenge each of you with something. Spiritual disciplines are important tools for keeping us on the right track and keeping us connected to God. And I kind of view it like dates with my wife. If we don't go on dates regularly, things start to get a little squirrely. And we are both quality time people. My wife and I both are. And so could I challenge you to simply do this? Pray for 10 minutes a day. And I like to use the acronym ACTS, ACTS. I learned this growing up, and I love it. I don't necessarily use it now, but it's a great place to start if you don't have a good habit of praying. And I think prayer is the greatest spiritual discipline that the Christian has to them. And John, I don't know if you have a different opinion on that, but I mean, I can't think of a spiritual discipline that is greater than prayer. So
Absolutely. I second that 100%.
yeah. ACTS, ACTS. A just stands for adore God. C, confess sin. T, thank God. S, supplicate or supply needs. And or I'll just talk to him like I talk to you, John. I go out and I talk to myself. I just try not to talk to him in public places like that because it's a little weird. But listeners, if
Oh,
we
that's
could,
okay.
if we could just create this habit of praying together, I think that would go a long way to helping you grow in your Christian life. So, spiritual disciplines are important. I just want to mention this one: pray. Just spend time praying.